As usual, if you like these stories or it felt meaningful to you, feel free to like, share, and comment your thoughts below, as well as subscribe to our channel. It could be a huge support for our work. Now, let's just enjoy the stories.
For 2 years, Lena Morales scrubbed blood from marble floors and pretended not to see the guns. She was a ghost in Adrian Valenti's Miami mansion, invisible, forgettable, safe, until the night she saw death crouched beneath his car. One scream shattered everything. The bomb was real. The enemies were faster. And saving a crime boss's life doesn't earn gratitude. It paints a target on your back. Now the maid who wanted nothing but survival must choose: disappear forever or stand beside the most dangerous man in Miami and fight for a life she never thought she deserved. If you want to see how an invisible woman becomes the most dangerous person in the room, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Lena's story travels. The pre-dawn darkness over Miami carried the salt-thick humidity that clung to skin like a warning. Inside the Valenti mansion, a structure of white stone and bulletproof glass perched above Biscayne Bay, Lena Morales moved through shadows with the practiced silence of someone who had learned that invisibility meant survival. She had been cleaning Adrian Valenti's home for 2 years. 730 days of scrubbing imported Italian marble, polishing crystal that cost more than her annual salary, and carefully, meticulously, pretending not to see the things that happened in the darker corners of this beautiful prison. Lena understood the rules. Don't ask questions. Don't make eye contact with the men who arrived at midnight carrying duffel bags that clinked with metal. Don't flinch when voices rose behind closed doors, when gunshots echoed from the basement shooting range, when blood needed to be cleaned from surfaces the police would never see. Most importantly, stay invisible. At 28, Lena had perfected the art. She was small, quiet, with dark hair she kept pulled back in a tight bun and clothes deliberately chosen to blend into the background. Gray uniform, flat shoes, no jewelry, nothing that would catch attention or invite conversation. She was Brazilian, her English still carrying the melodic accent of Sao Paulo, though she'd been in Miami for 4 years now. Her immigration papers were complicated, not quite legal, not quite illegal, existing in that gray zone where desperation met opportunity. The kind of situation that made someone grateful for any job, no matter what it required them to ignore. The Valenti mansion employed 12 staff members. Most lived off-site, coming and going on strict schedules. Lena was different. She lived in a small apartment 10 minutes away, but her shifts often ran 16 hours. She knew the house better than anyone except Adrian himself. She knew which floorboards creaked, which security cameras had blind spots, which rooms were cleaned by staff and which Adrian cleaned himself. Always alone, always with the door locked. She knew the mansion's rhythms the way a doctor knows a heartbeat, and she knew when something was wrong. It was 4:47 a.m. when Lena noticed the disruption. She'd been finishing the third-floor hallway, her cart loaded with supplies, when she glanced through the window overlooking the circular driveway. The mansion's exterior lighting created pools of amber illumination against the darkness, and in one of those pools she saw movement, a shadow, low to the ground, near Adrian's car. Lena froze, her hand still gripping the handle of her cleaning cart. The Valenti estate had security that rivaled military installations. Cameras everywhere, armed guards patrolling the perimeter, motion sensors, pressure plates, and measures Lena didn't even know about. Nothing moved on this property without permission, but there it was. A darker patch of darkness, human-shaped, crouched beneath the driver's side of Adrian's black Bentley. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to look away, to push her cart forward, to finish her shift and go home and forget what she'd seen. That was the smart choice, the safe choice, the choice that had kept her alive and employed for 2 years. The shadow moved again, then melted away into the landscaped gardens flanking the driveway, gone as quickly as it had appeared. Maybe she'd imagined it. Maybe it was just a security guard, or one of Adrian's men, doing something she wasn't supposed to understand. Maybe. Lena's hands trembled slightly as she continued her work. She finished the hallway, moved to the guest suites, tried to focus on the familiar motions of vacuuming, dusting, restoring order to spaces that existed primarily for show. But her mind kept circling back to that shadow, that wrong, out-of-place movement in a world where everything was controlled and monitored. She knew things about this house. She knew Adrian Valenti was not a businessman, despite what the plaques in his office claimed. She knew the men who visited weren't colleagues, but soldiers. She knew the mansion wasn't a home, but a fortress. And she knew that in Adrian's world, unexpected movements in the dark usually meant death. By 6:15 a.m., the mansion began its morning transformation. Lights flickered on in sequence. The kitchen staff arrived through the service entrance. The smell of coffee drifted through the halls. Lena descended to the main floor, pushing her cart toward the storage closet near the kitchen. She could hear the head of household, Marcus Webb, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and secrets Lena never asked about, giving instructions to the breakfast staff. Through the tall windows flanking the front entrance, Lena could see the driveway. The Bentley sat exactly where it had been, sleek and black and ordinary in the growing morning light. Nothing looked wrong, no signs of tampering, no evidence of the shadow she'd seen hours earlier. Maybe she really had imagined it. Maybe the stress of this job, the constant low-level fear that hummed through her days, had finally manifested as paranoid hallucinations. Lena was trying to convince herself of this when Adrian Valenti appeared at the top of the main staircase. She'd seen him hundreds of times, but familiarity never quite dulled the impact of his presence. Adrian was 36, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of dark Italian features that belonged on magazine covers if those features weren't hardened by violence. His suit probably cost more than Lena made in 6 months. His watch could have paid her rent for a year. But it wasn't his wealth that made men step aside when he walked past. It was the absolute certainty in his movements, the confidence of someone who had never encountered a problem he couldn't solve through money, influence, or controlled brutality. Adrian barely glanced at Lena as he descended the stairs. She might as well have been furniture, invisible, just as she'd intended. He crossed the marble foyer, checking his phone with the distracted air of someone running through a mental checklist. Marcus appeared from the kitchen, offering an update on the day's schedule that Lena didn't hear clearly. Adrian nodded, already moving toward the front entrance. Through the window, Lena could see his driver, a massive man named Torres, opening the Bentley's rear door. Adrian's hand touched the front door handle, and Lena's voice broke through 2 years of carefully maintained silence. "Don't start the car!" The words tore from her throat with a force that shocked her almost as much as everyone else in the foyer. Adrian spun, his hand moving instinctively toward the gun Lena knew he wore beneath his tailored jacket. Marcus stepped forward, confusion creasing his features. 2 security guards materialized from doorways Lena hadn't even noticed. Every eye in the room locked onto her. Lena's entire body shook. She'd just committed the cardinal sin. She'd made herself visible. Worse, she'd shouted at Adrian Valenti, interrupted him, drawn attention to herself in the most dramatic way possible. But the words kept coming, desperate and rushed, her accent thickening with panic. "The car. I saw someone. Last night, early this morning. Under your car. A shadow, crouched by the driver's side. I wasn't sure, but I saw something and—" She faltered under the weight of Adrian's stare. His eyes were the color of smoke and just as difficult to read. He studied her with an intensity that made Lena wish she could disappear into the marble floor beneath her feet. "You saw someone tampering with my car," Adrian said slowly, his voice carrying a dangerous calm. "At what time?" 4:47, Lena whispered. "I was cleaning the 3rd floor. I looked out the window and saw. It was just for a moment, but—" "Why didn't you report it immediately?" This came from Marcus, whose kind eyes now held suspicion. Lena's throat tightened. How could she explain that she'd spent 2 years training herself not to see, not to know, not to interfere? That speaking up meant acknowledging she paid attention, and paying attention in this house was dangerous? "I wasn't sure," she managed. "I thought maybe it was security or one of your men, and I didn't want to cause trouble over nothing." Adrian's expression remained unreadable. He turned to one of the security guards, a lean man with a scar running through his left eyebrow. "Reyes, check the vehicle, full sweep." "Sir, the perimeter was clear all night. Cameras didn't flag anything unusual." But Reyes was already moving, speaking into his radio as he headed for the door. Lena stood frozen in the center of the foyer, her cleaning cart abandoned, her careful invisibility shattered into pieces around her feet. The other staff members had appeared in doorways, drawn by the commotion. They stared at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. She'd just ended her own employment, possibly her own life if she was wrong about what she'd seen. Adrian remained motionless, watching Reyes and two other guards approach the Bentley through the window. Torres, the driver, stepped back as the security team began their inspection. The silence stretched. Lena counted her own heartbeats. 60, 70, 80. Then Reyes dropped to the ground and disappeared beneath the vehicle. Even through the window, Lena could see his body go rigid. His hand shot out, gesturing sharply to the other guards. Suddenly, everyone was moving, guards shouting into radios, more security pouring from the house, Torres being pulled rapidly away from the Bentley. Reyes emerged from under the car, his scarred face pale. He ran toward the house, taking the front steps 3 at a time. He burst through the door, breathing hard. "Bomb," he said flatly. "Pressure trigger, sophisticated. It was meant for you, sir." The words seemed to echo in the suddenly airless foyer. The moment Torres started the engine, or you opened the door, Reyes didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Adrian turned slowly to look at Lena. This time, his expression had changed. The dangerous calm had shifted into something else, something that might have been shock, if men like Adrian Valenti allowed themselves to feel shock. "You saved my life," he said quietly. Lena couldn't respond. Her legs felt weak, her hands numb. She'd been right. The shadow had been real. Someone had tried to kill Adrian Valenti, and only her scream had stopped it. "Get the bomb squad," Adrian ordered, still looking at Lena. "Clear the staff to the south lawn. Nobody touches that car until it's been disarmed and traced." The security team moved instantly, but Adrian remained still, his smoky eyes fixed on the small Brazilian maid who'd just prevented his assassination. "What's your name?" he asked. After 2 years of invisibility, after countless days of cleaning his home, he didn't know her name. "Lena Morales, sir." "Lena." He tested the name as if filing it away in some mental catalog. "Where did you see the shadow?" "Exactly." She described it, the angle of her view from the third-floor window, the position of the figure, the way it had moved and disappeared into the gardens. Adrian listened with complete focus, occasionally asking sharp questions that made Lena realize he was mentally reconstructing the entire scene. "The cameras should have caught it," Reyes muttered, appearing at Adrian's shoulder with a tablet. "But look, there's a 4-minute gap in the exterior coverage between 4:43 and 4:47. "Jammed," Adrian said immediately. "Professional work." "The bomb, too," Reyes confirmed. "This wasn't amateur hour. Whoever did this had intelligence, equipment, and access to your schedule." The implication hung heavy in the air. Someone inside Adrian's organization had betrayed him. Someone close enough to know his morning routine, his vehicle, his security patterns. Lena felt the weight of too many eyes on her. She'd just become a liability in a different way. Not because she knew too much, but because she'd prevented a carefully planned assassination. In Adrian's world, that made her a witness, a complication, possibly a target. "Sir, we should move you to the safe room until we've swept the entire property," Marcus said quietly. Adrian ignored him. He was still looking at Lena with that unnerving intensity. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you scream? You could have stayed silent, stayed safe. Why risk exposing yourself for someone you don't know?" The question caught Lena off guard. She'd acted on instinct, on the panicked certainty that she couldn't watch someone die when she had the power to prevent it. "I'm a veterinarian," she heard herself say. The words felt strange on her tongue. She hadn't spoken about her previous life in months. "In Brazil, before I came here. I took an oath to do no harm, to preserve life. Even when—" She gestured helplessly at the mansion, at Adrian, at the world she'd found herself trapped in. "Even when it's complicated." Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. "You're a veterinarian working as a maid." "My credentials don't transfer," Lena said quietly, "and my immigration status is complicated." "I see." Adrian's tone suggested he saw far more than Lena had intended to reveal. He turned to Marcus. Move Lena to the guest suite on the second floor. Give her access to anything she needs, and put a security detail on her. Lena's heart stopped. Sir, that's not necessary. I can just... You saved my life, Adrian interrupted. Which means whoever tried to kill me will now try to kill you. Staying invisible isn't an option anymore. The truth of his words hit Lena like ice water. Of course. The conspirators would need to know how their plan had failed. And the moment they reviewed security footage from inside the house, they'd see Lena screaming her warning. They'd see her face, learn her name, find her address. I need to call my mother, Lena said suddenly. Her mother's still in Sao Paulo, battling cancer and waiting for Lena to send enough money for treatment. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you, Adrian said with absolute certainty. You're under my protection now. Whatever you need, whoever needs protecting, consider it done. The promise should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like a door slamming shut. Lena had worked for 2 years to stay invisible, to avoid entanglement in Adrian's dangerous world. And now, with one desperate scream, she'd bound herself to the most dangerous man in Miami. Marcus appeared at her elbow, gently guiding her away from the foyer as the bomb squad arrived in unmarked vehicles. Lena let herself be led up the grand staircase, past the third-floor window where she'd seen the shadow, to a guest suite that was larger than her entire apartment. Through the window, she could see the organized chaos below. Police vehicles with muted sirens, men in protective gear approaching the Bentley, Adrian standing in the center of it all like a general surveying a battlefield. He looked up suddenly, as if sensing her gaze, and their eyes met across the distance. Lena realized with cold clarity that her life had just changed irrevocably. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer safe in her anonymity. She was visible now, seen, known. And in Adrian Valenti's world, being seen meant becoming a piece on a chessboard where the stakes were measured in bullets and blood. The security guard Marcus had assigned to her door, a young woman with alert eyes and a gun at her hip, nodded politely as Lena entered the suite. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like the ceiling of a tomb. Lena sank onto the edge of the silk-covered bed and let her hands shake. She'd saved a crime boss's life, and now she had to survive the consequences. 4 hours later, the bomb had been disarmed and removed for analysis. The exterior cameras had been restored and upgraded. Every member of the security team had been questioned, their movements and communications reviewed for signs of complicity. And Lena sat in Adrian's private office, a room she'd cleaned 100 times but never truly entered, listening to him explain how her world had just been destroyed. Your apartment building was hit 90 minutes ago, Adrian said without preamble. He sat behind a desk of dark wood and chrome, his suit jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with old scars. Firebombed. Your unit was the primary target. Lena's vision blurred. Everything she owned, her clothes, her photographs, the letters from her mother, the veterinary textbook she'd brought from Brazil, like talismans of a life she'd lost, gone. Was anyone hurt? She managed to ask. The building was evacuated in time, no casualties. Adrian's tone suggested this was due to his intervention, not luck. But the message is clear. Whoever tried to kill me knows you interfered. They're eliminating loose ends. Why? Lena's voice cracked. I don't know anything. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. Adrian leaned forward, his smoky eyes intense. You're the person who saw what my entire security apparatus missed. You're the person who acted when silence would have been easier. That makes you dangerous to my enemies and valuable to me. I don't want to be valuable to you, Lena said quietly. I just want to go home. You don't have a home to go to, not anymore. The words were brutal but true. And going back to Brazil would just make you an easier target. Your mother's in Sao Paulo, correct? Lena's blood turned to ice. You researched me. The moment you screamed, yes. Adrian pulled up a file on his computer screen. Lena Morales, 28, born in Sao Paulo. Degree in veterinary medicine from University of Sao Paulo. Mother, Elena Morales, 63, stage 3 breast cancer, currently receiving inadequate treatment due to financial constraints. You send her 70% of your income every month. He said it without judgment, but Lena felt exposed down to her bones. Every private struggle, every sacrifice laid bare. Your credentials don't transfer because you entered the country on a tourist visa that expired 18 months ago, Adrian continued. You've been working without legal authorization, hoping to save enough money to either return home or afford the legal fees to fix your status. Neither option was really viable, which is why you took a job in my house despite knowing exactly what kind of man I am. Lena said nothing. What could she say? He'd summarized her entire desperate situation in 3 sentences. Adrian closed the file. Here's what happens now. You stay here, under protection, until we've identified and eliminated the threat. We'll move your mother to a facility in the U.S. where she can receive proper treatment. I can't afford that. I can. Consider it compensation for saving my life. I don't want your money. Lena stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't want to owe you anything. You don't. Adrian stood as well, moving around the desk with predatory grace. I owe you. There's a difference. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that Lena could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that probably cost more than her monthly salary, close enough to see the faint scar along his jawline, the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair at the temples. I know what you think of me, Adrian said quietly. You've cleaned my house for 2 years. You've seen the guns, heard the conversations, scrubbed away evidence I'm sure you wished you could unsee. You think I'm a criminal, a monster, maybe. I don't think about you at all, Lena lied. A ghost of a smile crossed Adrian's face. Smart survival instinct. But here's the truth, Lena. I am what you think I am. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made choices that cost people their lives. He paused, something complicated moving behind his eyes. But I also have a code. Loyalty matters. Honor matters. And debts get paid. You saved my life at great personal risk. That creates an obligation I take seriously. So this is about your honor, Lena said, hearing the bitterness in her own voice. This is about keeping you alive. Adrian's tone sharpened. Whoever tried to kill me today has resources, intelligence, and no hesitation about collateral damage. They burned down your building, Lena. If you'd been home, you'd be dead. The words hit like a physical blow. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the Florida heat. How long? She asked. How long do I have to stay here? Until it's safe. Could be days. Could be weeks. And my mother? Already being arranged. Medical transport to Miami, admission to Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center, full treatment protocol. She'll be in better hands than anywhere in Sao Paulo. Despite everything, despite her fear and anger and the ruins of her carefully built anonymity, Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother was dying because they couldn't afford proper treatment. And this man, this criminal, this stranger who barely knew she existed until this morning, was offering to save her with the casual ease of someone ordering breakfast. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? Adrian studied her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that suggested he was revealing something he rarely shared. Because you screamed when staying silent would have been easier. Because you chose to act when you had every reason to look away. Because in a world where everyone wants something from me, you wanted nothing except to do the right thing. He stepped back, creating distance, reestablishing the formality between them. Because you're a veterinarian working as a maid, and I think there's a story there worth knowing. Before Lena could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sir, we've completed the initial trace on the bomb. You need to see this. Adrian nodded, already moving toward the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back at Lena. You're safe here. I give you my word. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone in an office filled with the artifacts of a life she didn't understand. Expensive art, leather-bound books, photographs of Adrian with men Lena recognized from news reports as politicians and businessmen, a life built on secrets and violence and power. And now, whether she wanted it or not, Lena was part of that life. She walked to the window, looking out over the manicured grounds, the sparkling bay beyond, the city of Miami rising in the distance like a promise or a threat. Somewhere out there, someone wanted her dead. Someone who'd tried to kill Adrian and failed because of her desperate scream. Lena pressed her palm against the bulletproof glass and made herself a promise. She would survive this. She would protect her mother. And somehow, When this nightmare ended, she would reclaim the invisible safety she'd lost. She just had to stay alive long enough to become nobody again. But as the sun climbed higher over Miami and security teams moved like shadows across the grounds below, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that invisibility was no longer an option. She'd been seen by the most dangerous man in the city. And in Adrian Valenti's world, being seen changed everything. The sun had barely moved across the sky when Lena's fragile sense of security shattered again. She was still standing at the window when the door to Adrian's office burst open. Reyes entered without knocking, his scarred face tight with urgency. "We've got movement. 3 vehicles approaching from different directions. Armed occupants confirmed." Adrian was on his feet instantly, the civilized veneer dropping away to reveal something harder, colder. "Lockdown protocol. Now." The mansion transformed within seconds. Steel shutters began descending over windows with mechanical precision. Lena heard the heavy thump of reinforced doors sealing throughout the building. Red emergency lights flickered on in the hallways, painting everything in shades of blood. "Get her to the safe room," Adrian ordered, gesturing at Lena. "No." The word left Lena's mouth before she could think about it. "Tell me what's happening." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "What's happening is that someone wants both of us dead, and they're not waiting for a convenient opportunity. Now move." But Reyes was already at the window, binoculars raised. "Sir, they're not attacking. They're positioning for surveillance, blockading the exits. They're trapping us," Adrian said quietly. "Smart. Cut off escape routes. Wait for—" The lights died. Emergency generators kicked in after 3 seconds of darkness, but those 3 seconds were enough to make Lena's heart stop. "They've cut external power," Marcus reported through Adrian's radio. "Generators are holding, but we're running on limited capacity." Adrian moved to his desk, pulling open a drawer that Lena had cleaned around 100 times without ever trying to open. Inside was an arsenal, 3 handguns, ammunition, what looked like a tactical knife. "How many people are in the house right now?" Lena asked, her veterinarian's mind already calculating. "Population, resources, sustainability. 12 security personnel, 8 household staff, you and me," Marcus answered through the radio. 22 total. "Food supplies?" Adrian glanced at her with something that might have been approval. "Enough for 2 weeks if we ration. Water for 3. Medical supplies in the basement clinic." "You have a clinic?" "I have a lot of things." Adrian chambered around in one of the handguns with practiced efficiency. "Including enemies who are very angry that you're still breathing." The radio crackled again. "Sir, we're receiving a call on the secure line. Audio only." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Put it through." A voice filled the office, smooth, cultured, with an Italian accent that made Lena think of old movies about organized crime. "Adrian, how fortunate that you're alive. I heard about the unfortunate incident with your vehicle." "Salvatore." Adrian's voice could have cut glass. "I should have known. Bombs were always your style. Cowardly, impersonal." The man on the other end, Salvatore, laughed. "Says the man hiding behind steel walls. I'm offering you a courtesy, Adrian. A chance to resolve this without further bloodshed." "Resolve what? Your failed assassination attempt?" "Failed because of that little maid of yours. Very resourceful, screaming like that, very brave." Salvatore's voice took on a darker edge. "Or very stupid. I haven't decided which." Lena felt ice slide down her spine. They knew. Of course they knew. "Here's my offer," Salvatore continued. "Send out the girl. She's the only witness to my operative's face. Once she's eliminated, we can discuss the larger issues between us like civilized men. You want me to hand over the woman who saved my life so you can kill her?" Adrian's tone was flat, emotionless. "That's your idea of civilized negotiation." "I want you to demonstrate that you understand the natural order of things. She's nobody, Adrian. A maid, an illegal immigrant. No family here, no connections, no value. Her life means nothing in the larger game we're playing." Lena's hands clenched into fists. Nobody. Invisible. Worthless. She'd heard variations of this her entire time in Miami, from immigration officials who processed her expired visa, from employment agencies who offered her work that paid half minimum wage, from men who looked through her like she was made of glass. But hearing it laid out so bluntly, Her life weighed against political convenience and found wanting. That was new. Adrian met her eyes across the office. Something unreadable moved in his expression. "No," he said simply. Silence on the other end, then, "Excuse me?" "I said no. The woman stays under my protection. Adrian, be reasonable. This is business. Don't let sentiment cloud your judgment." "There's no sentiment involved." Adrian's voice had gone cold. "She saved my life. That creates a debt. And I pay my debts, Salvatore. You know this about me. Even if it means war?" "Especially then." The radio crackled with what might have been a sigh. "You're making a mistake. That girl is worth nothing. She's not even legal. Nobody will miss her when she's gone." "I'll miss her," Adrian said quietly, "because I'll be dead if she hadn't acted. So here's my counteroffer. Take your men and leave Miami. Tonight. Because if you're still here when the sun rises, I will burn your entire operation to the ground." Salvatore laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Big words from a man who can't leave his own house. Fine. We'll do this the hard way. But her blood is on your hands, Adrian. Remember that when you're scrubbing her off your expensive floors." The line went dead. Reyes appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "The surveillance vehicles are pulling back but not leaving. They're settling in for a siege." "Let them," Adrian said. "Marcus, I want full defensive positions. Rotating shifts, nobody sleeps more than 4 hours. Food and water rationed starting now. And get me everything we have on Salvatore Brunaro's current operations, properties, associates, financial holdings, everything." As Reyes and Marcus moved to execute orders, Adrian turned to Lena. She was still standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to process what had just happened. "You should have given me to him," she said quietly. "No. He's right. I'm nobody. My life isn't worth a war." Adrian crossed to her in 3 strides. He didn't touch her, but his presence was overwhelming, filling her awareness like a physical force. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice low and intense. "Salvatore Brunaro is a parasite who has spent 20 years building power on the backs of people he considers disposable. He traffics in human beings, Lena. Children, mostly. Girls from Eastern Europe, boys from South America. He sells them to the highest bidder and sleeps soundly because he's convinced himself they're nobody." Lena felt sick. "I've done terrible things," Adrian continued. "I'm not asking you to see me as a good man, but I have lines I don't cross. Salvatore has no lines, and the moment I hand you over to him, the moment I agree that some lives are worth less than others, I become him." "So this is about your moral code," Lena whispered. "This is about the fact that you're not nobody." Adrian's eyes held hers. "You're a veterinarian who took an oath to preserve life. You're a daughter sending 70% of her income to save her mother. You're a woman brave enough to scream when silence would have been easier. That's not nobody, Lena. That's someone worth fighting for." The words hit her like a wave. Nobody had fought for her in years. Not since she'd left Brazil. Not since her immigration status had dissolved into legal limbo. Not since she'd started taking jobs that paid cash and asked no questions. "I don't understand you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You're a criminal. You hurt people. But you're talking about human trafficking like it's a line you won't cross, and you're protecting me like I actually matter." "Maybe I don't understand myself either." Adrian stepped back, creating distance again. "But I know that if I give you to Salvatore, I lose something I can't get back. Call it honor. Call it humanity. Call it whatever you want. I'm not crossing that line." Before Lena could respond, the lights flickered again. This time they stayed off longer. 5 seconds, 10, 15. When the generators kicked in, the emergency light seemed dimmer, more strained. "They're going to wear us down," Lena said, her veterinarian's training kicking in. Siege situations weren't that different from quarantine protocols. Limited resources, mounting pressure, the need to triage and prioritize. "How long can we really hold out?" "Long enough." But Adrian's expression suggested he was calculating the same odds she was. Marcus returned, his face grave. "Sir, we have a problem. The staff, most of them want to leave. They're terrified, and legally, we can't force them to stay." Adrian swore quietly. "How many?" 6 out of 8 household staff. They're asking for safe passage out." which Salvatore will gladly provide, Adrian said bitterly, in exchange for information about our defenses, our routines, our weak points. You can't blame them for being scared, Lena said. They didn't sign up for this. Neither did you. Adrian turned to Marcus. Give them safe passage. Arrange transport through the south gate, clear corridor, no interference. But search them first. No phones, no electronics, nothing that could be used to transmit information. That's not going to stop Salvatore from questioning them. No, but it might buy us a few hours. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of stress Lena had seen him display. Who's staying? Rosa, the head cook, and James, one of the groundskeepers. They say they've worked for your family too long to abandon you now. Something softened in Adrian's expression. Take care of them, extra rations, whatever they need. As Marcus left to handle the evacuation, Adrian moved to the window. The steel shutters had risen slightly, just enough to provide a view but not enough to create a vulnerability. Outside, twilight was falling over Miami, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I need to tell you something, Lena said suddenly. About why I noticed the shadow under your car. Adrian turned, waiting. In Brazil, before I came here, I worked at a veterinary clinic near Sao Paulo. We treated a lot of strays, animals that had been abused or abandoned. You learn to read body language, to spot the subtle signs of trauma or aggression, an ear flattened just slightly, a weight shift that means flight or fight. She moved closer to the window, her reflection ghostly in the bulletproof glass. I spent 2 years watching this house the same way I used to watch those animals, learning the patterns, the rhythms, the normal behaviors. I knew which guards walked which routes. I knew when deliveries arrived. I knew the sound of your car pulling into the driveway. You were monitoring us, Adrian said, but there was no accusation in his tone, just curiosity. I was surviving. Staying invisible meant understanding everything around me. So when I saw that shadow, I knew it was wrong. Not because I saw anything specific, but because it broke the pattern. Adrian studied her with renewed interest. You're more observant than most of my security team. I'm more motivated. They're paid to watch. I was trying to stay alive. And now? Now I'm still trying to stay alive. But the rules have changed. Lena turned to face him fully. You said I'm under your protection. What does that actually mean? It means that as long as you're in this house, no one touches you. It means that anyone who tries to harm you has to go through me first. It means that your mother gets the medical treatment she needs, and your immigration status gets fixed, and you get to decide what kind of life you want to build. And in exchange? Adrian's smile was thin. You think there's always an exchange. In my experience, there's always an exchange. Smart. He turned back to the window. I don't want anything from you, Lena. Not loyalty you haven't earned, not gratitude I haven't deserved, not anything else. The pause before anything else was telling. Lena had worked in Adrian's house long enough to know his reputation with women. Beautiful socialites came and went from the mansion with predictable regularity. None of them stayed long. But, Adrian continued, if you want to help, I won't turn it down. You have skills I didn't know about. Observation, pattern recognition, the ability to see what others miss. That could be useful. You want me to spy for you. I want you to do what you've been doing for 2 years. Watch, listen, notice, but this time tell me what you see. It should have felt like a trap. Should have felt like he was using her, manipulating her into deeper involvement in his world. Instead, it felt like being seen, really seen, for the first time in years. Okay, Lena said quietly. I'll help, but I have conditions. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating with me? You said I get to decide what kind of life I want, so I'm deciding. First condition, my mother gets the best possible care, no strings attached. If something happens to me, the treatment continues. Done. Second, when this is over, you help me fix my immigration status properly. Legal residency, work authorization, everything. Also done. Third, you tell me the truth about who Salvatore is, why he wants you dead, what I'm really caught in the middle of. Adrian hesitated. This, apparently, was harder than the first 2 conditions. The truth is complicated, he said finally. Then uncomplicate it. He studied her for a long moment, then moved to his desk. From a locked drawer, different from the one with the guns, he pulled out a file folder. He handed it to Lena. Inside were photographs. Crime scenes, mostly. Bodies in various states of violence, but also other images. Young girls, terrified and hollow-eyed. Boys barely into their teens, brutalized and broken. Salvatore runs one of the largest human trafficking operations on the East Coast, Adrian said as Lena forced herself to look at the images. He's been trying to expand into Miami for 5 years. I've been stopping him. Lena looked up sharply. You've been stopping him? You're a criminal. Yes. Adrian's expression was hard. I control gambling, loan operations, some protection rackets. I've hurt people, Lena. Killed people. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But not this. She gestured at the photographs. Never this. My father built his empire on drugs and gambling. When I took over 8 years ago, I made changes. No drugs. I've seen what they do to communities. No human trafficking. There are some lines you don't cross. And no civilian casualties if they can be avoided. Your father disagreed with these changes? My father's been dead for 3 years. Heart attack. Adrian's tone suggested the heart attack might not have been entirely natural. He thought I was weak, going soft. Maybe I am, but I sleep better than he ever did. Lena closed the folder, unable to look at those haunted faces anymore. So Salvatore wants you dead because you're blocking his expansion. Partially, but it's more personal than that. 2 years ago, we intercepted one of his shipments. 18 girls, ages 12 to 16, being transported from Moldova. I didn't just stop the shipment. I made sure those girls got back to their families. I made sure Salvatore's people involved in that operation disappeared. The way he said disappeared made Lena's stomach turn. He's wanted revenge ever since, Adrian continued. But he's smart. He waited, built alliances, gathered intelligence. The bomb this morning wasn't his first attempt. It was just the closest he's gotten. And now he's using me to get to you. Now he's making a mistake. Adrian's voice went cold. Because he thinks you're a weakness. He thinks I'll break trying to protect you. Won't you? The question hung in the air between them. Outside, night had fully fallen. The siege lights Salvatore's men had set up created harsh illumination around the mansion's perimeter, a prison made of light. I don't break, Adrian said quietly. I bend, I adapt, I find another way, but I don't break. A sudden commotion from the hallway interrupted them. Reyes burst in, not bothering to knock. Sir, we have incoming, not vehicles, personnel on foot. Looks like a probe of our defenses. Adrian was moving before Reyes finished speaking, Lena following on instinct. They reached the security center, a room Lena had never been allowed to enter before, where multiple monitors showed different angles of the grounds. On 3 screens, figures in dark clothing were moving through the gardens, testing the perimeter, looking for weaknesses. They're professional, Reyes muttered. Military movement patterns. Coordinated approach. How many? Adrian demanded. 12 visible. Probably more in reserve. Adrian studied the screens with absolute focus. Lena watched him transform, seeing the crime boss fully emerge. This wasn't the man who'd spoken to her about honor and humanity. This was someone else, calculating, dangerous, built for violence. Deploy countermeasures at points 3 and 7, Adrian ordered. Non-lethal if possible. I want to send a message, not start a bloodbath. And if they breach? They won't. But even as Adrian said it, one of the figures on screen produced something that looked like a small explosive device. He placed it against the outer wall and retreated. The explosion, when it came, was smaller than Lena expected, but effective. A section of the wall crumbled, creating an opening. They're coming in, Reyes said unnecessarily. Adrian's hand moved to his weapon. Seal the inner doors, activate the... Wait! Lena was staring at one of the screens, her pattern recognition instincts screaming. Look at the northwest corner, screen 4. Everyone turned. On the monitor, seemingly far from the action, a single figure was approaching a service entrance, moving slowly, carefully, without the tactical precision of the main assault team. That's not a soldier, Lena said. Look at the body language. Hesitant, scared. Adrian leaned closer. What are you saying? I'm saying that's a diversion. Lena pointed at the main assault team. They're making noise, drawing your attention, while someone else, someone who looks harmless, gets close through the back. A bomb? Reyes suggested. Or intel gathering? Or... Lena stopped, her mind racing. What's in that service entrance? What could they access from there? Marcus, who joined them, paled. The generator room. If they get in there, we lose power completely, Adrian finished, and the backup systems can't handle full defensive protocols. He turned to Reyes. Detail to the northwest entrance now. Intercept, but don't engage until we know what we're dealing with. As Reyes moved to comply, Adrian looked at Lena with something like wonder. You just saved us again. I just know how to read patterns, Lena said, but her heart was racing. She'd just actively participated in defending the mansion. Crossed another line from innocent bystander to active participant in whatever war Adrian was fighting. The screens showed Reyes and two other guards converging on the service entrance. The hesitant figure, now visible as a young man barely 20, froze when he saw them. His hands came up empty. He's not armed, Marcus observed. No, Adrian said slowly. He's the delivery system. On screen, one of the guards approached the young man, patted him down, found something in his jacket and held it up. A phone. Just a phone. Remote detonator, Reyes said through the radio. The explosives are already in place. He was just sent to trigger them. Adrian swore viciously. Evacuate the generator room, now. Clear everyone from the southeast quadrant. But it was too late. Even through the reinforced walls of the security center, Lena felt the explosion. Bigger this time. The lights flickered once, twice, and died. Emergency power kicked in, but it was weaker, dimmer. The monitors showed chaos, guards scrambling, the main assault team using the confusion to push harder at the breach point. We're losing the perimeter, Marcus said, his voice tight. Adrian's face was expressionless, but Lena could see the calculations running behind his eyes, resources, options, probabilities of success. Fall back to inner defense, he ordered. Seal all entry points to the main house. Concentrate personnel on the primary corridors, and get the civilians to the safe room. That includes you, he said to Lena. No. The word came out stronger than she expected. You said I could help, so let me help. Lena, I'm a veterinarian. I know trauma care, emergency medicine, triage protocols. When people start getting hurt, and they will, you're going to need someone who can handle it. Adrian started to argue, then stopped. Because she was right. The mansion's regular doctor had been among the staff who'd evacuated. Fine, but you stay with Marcus. You do exactly what he says, and if I order you to the safe room, you go. Understood? Understood. They moved through corridors painted red by emergency lighting, passing guards taking up defensive positions. Rosa, the cook who'd stayed, was helping to distribute supplies from the kitchen. James, the groundskeeper, was moving through rooms, closing shutters, sealing vulnerabilities. Ordinary people caught in an extraordinary situation, doing what they could to survive. Just like Lena. The assault lasted 90 minutes. It felt like 90 hours. Salvatore's men breached the outer perimeter in 3 places, but couldn't get past the inner defenses. Adrian's security team, outnumbered but fighting on familiar ground with better equipment, held every critical position. Lena found herself in an improvised medical station in the mansion's library, treating injuries as guards cycled through, mostly minor, cuts from broken glass, bruises from falls, one sprained wrist from hand-to-hand combat. But then they brought in a guard named Torres, the same driver who'd almost started Adrian's car that morning. He'd taken a bullet to the shoulder during the fighting. I need supplies, Lena said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Bandages, antiseptic, clean water, and something to sterilize instruments. Do you have a medical kit? Marcus produced a kit that would have made a military field surgeon jealous. As Lena worked to clean and dress Torres's wound, using skills she'd developed treating animals but translating them to human anatomy, she felt something shift inside her. She wasn't invisible anymore. Wasn't nobody. She was needed, functional, making a difference. It terrified her and exhilarated her in equal measure. You're good at this, Torres said through gritted teeth as she finished bandaging his shoulder. I've had practice, though usually my patients have 4 legs and can't complain. He managed a weak laugh, then his expression sobered. Thank you. For this morning. If you hadn't screamed, I know. Mr. Valenti, he's a hard man, but he's fair. You're safe with him. Lena wasn't sure if she believed that, but she appreciated the sentiment. The assault ended as suddenly as it began. Salvatore's men withdrew, leaving behind 3 wounded who were immediately secured by Adrian's guards. The mansion settled into an uneasy quiet, punctuated by the sounds of damage assessment and defensive reinforcement. Lena found Adrian on the second-floor balcony overlooking the grounds. Dawn was breaking over Miami, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Smoke rose from the damaged sections of the wall, and scorch marks marred the perfect landscaping. Is it over? She asked quietly. For now. Adrian didn't turn. They were testing us, seeing how we'd respond. Next time, they'll come harder. How many next times will there be? As many as it takes. He finally looked at her, his face haggard with exhaustion. I'm sorry you're in the middle of this. I'm the one who screamed. You saved my life. And you refused to give me to Salvatore, so I guess we're even. Adrian's laugh was unexpected and genuine. We're not even close to even, Lena, but I appreciate the attempt at math. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun rise over the damaged grounds. Somewhere in the mansion, guards were changing shifts, repairs were being planned, and the siege continued its slow pressure. The guard, Torres? Lena said. He said you're fair, is that true? I try to be. Even when being fair is harder than being ruthless? Adrian turned to face her fully, especially then. Because the moment I stop trying to be fair, I become Salvatore. And that's a line I won't cross. Lena studied his face, the exhaustion, the determination, the complicated morality of a man who'd built an empire on crime but drew lines he refused to cross. I believe you, she said quietly. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, not quite a smile, but close. That might be the most dangerous thing you've said yet. Before Lena could ask what he meant, Reyes appeared with an urgent update. More vehicles were being positioned around the perimeter. Salvatore was settling in for a long siege, and somewhere in Miami, Lena's mother was being transported to the cancer center, unaware that her daughter was trapped in a mansion with a crime boss, defending against an enemy who wanted her dead. The invisible Maid had become visible, and visibility, in Adrian Valenti's world, meant learning to fight for the right to exist. The siege entered its 3rd day with the weight of a slow suffocation. Power remained limited, food rations had been cut again, and the perimeter vehicles Salvatore had positioned showed no signs of leaving. But it was the silence that wore on Lena most, the absence of normal life, the constant tension that made every sound feel like a threat. She was in the library checking on Torres when Marcus found her. Mr. Valenti needs you in his office, he said quietly. We have a situation. Lena's stomach dropped. In the past 72 hours, she'd learned that situation was Marcus's code for something going very wrong. Adrian's office had been converted into a war room. Maps of Miami covered one wall, surveillance feeds played on multiple screens, and the desk was buried under files and photographs. Adrian stood at the window, his back to the room, radiating a tension Lena could feel from across the space. You asked me to tell you the truth, he said without turning. So here it is. Salvatore just made his opening move in the real game. He gestured to one of the screens. Lena stepped closer and felt her blood turn to ice. The image showed her mother being wheeled through the corridors of Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center. The timestamp indicated it had been recorded less than an hour ago. He has people watching her, Lena whispered. He has people everywhere. Adrian finally turned. His face was granite, but his eyes held something dangerous. He sent this with a message. If I don't hand you over by midnight tomorrow, your mother has an unfortunate medical complication. The room spun. Lena gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. So this was never about me at all, she said, her voice hollow. It was about finding leverage. He's escalating because the siege isn't working. My defenses are holding, his men are getting impatient, and every day this drags on costs him money and credibility. Adrian moved to the desk, pulling up another file. But he made a mistake showing me this. A mistake? He's threatening to kill my mother. He's showing me he's desperate enough to threaten a civilian in a public hospital. That's sloppy, Lena. Desperate and sloppy. Adrian's voice carried a cold certainty, which means he's vulnerable. Lena wanted to scream. Her mother, the woman who'd raised her alone after her father died, who'd supported her dream of becoming a veterinarian, who told her to go to America and build a better life, was now a pawn in a game between criminals. What do we do? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. We end this. Adrian pulled up a map of Miami, specific locations marked in red. Salvatore controls his operation from 4 primary locations: his real estate holdings, his legitimate businesses, his distribution networks. We've been gathering intelligence while he's been focused on the siege. Intelligence from where? From the people Salvatore never sees. Adrian's expression held grim satisfaction. The cleaners in his office buildings, the dock workers who handle his shipments, the service staff in his restaurants, the invisible people. Lena's breath caught. You're using my idea. Your idea is brilliant. Salvatore built his empire looking down at everyone beneath him. He never considered that those invisible people might be watching, listening, gathering information. Adrian tapped several locations on the map. In the past 48 hours, we've learned more about his operation than we have in 2 years of traditional surveillance. What did you learn? That he's overextended. Most of his liquid assets are tied up in a shipment arriving tonight at the port of Miami. If that shipment is intercepted, his entire financial structure collapses. Reyes appeared in the doorway. Sir, we've confirmed the timeline. The container ship arrives at 11 p.m. His people will be moving the cargo between midnight and 3 a.m. What's in the shipment? Lena asked. The silence that followed told her everything she needed to know. People, she said flatly. He's trafficking people. 47 women and children from Moldova and Ukraine, Adrian confirmed, his voice tight with controlled rage. He's been planning this for 6 months. If the shipment succeeds, he makes $7 million and establishes his Miami operation permanently. Lena felt sick. 47 lives, reduced to cargo and profit margins. So we stop it, she said. We stop it, Adrian agreed, but doing so means leaving the mansion, breaking the siege, taking a massive tactical risk. He'll attack the house the moment he realizes you're gone. I know, which is why I need you to make a choice. Adrian met her eyes directly. You can stay here, in the safe room with maximum protection, or you can come with me and help save 47 people who are just as invisible as you used to be. The question hung between them. Lena thought about those photographs in Adrian's file, the hollow-eyed girls and brutalized boys. She thought about her mother in that hospital bed, vulnerable and unaware. She thought about 2 years of being invisible, of pretending not to see, of survival through silence. I'm coming with you, she said. Lena, you said I could help. You said my skills were valuable, so let me help. Her voice strengthened. I know what it means to be invisible. I know what it means to be seen as nobody. Those people in that shipment, they need someone who understands, someone who will fight for them because their lives actually matter. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Reyes. Get her a vest, lightweight body armor, nothing too restrictive, and brief her on the extraction plan. As Reyes moved to comply, Marcus stepped forward, his expression troubled. Sir, with all respect, bringing a civilian into an active operation? She's not a civilian, Adrian interrupted. Not anymore. The moment she screamed that warning, she became part of this, and she's earned the right to choose her own level of involvement. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded instead. He'd worked for Adrian long enough to recognize when a decision was final. Over the next 3 hours, Lena received a crash course in tactical operations that would have been absurd if it weren't terrifying. The body armor was lighter than she expected, but still restrictive. The communication earpiece felt foreign and uncomfortable. The basic self-defense instruction Reyes provided was nowhere near enough to make her feel prepared. But it was the conversation with Rosa that steadied her. The older woman found Lena in one of the guest rooms, struggling with the clasps on the body armor. Let me help you with that, mija, Rosa said, her weathered hands making quick work of the straps. I dressed 3 sons for the military. I know how these things work. I'm terrified, Lena admitted quietly. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Rosa stepped back, examining her handiwork. But don't let it paralyze you. Mr. Valenti, he sees something in you, something worth protecting, worth believing in. He barely knows me. He knows enough, and so do I. Rosa's eyes held a wisdom earned through decades of watching and surviving. I've worked in this house for 15 years. I've seen Mr. Valenti make hard choices, sometimes cruel choices, but I've never seen him risk everything for someone the way he's risking it for you. He's doing this to stop Salvatore, not for me. He's doing this because you made him remember there are things worth fighting for beyond power and territory. That girl you used to be, the one who stayed invisible, she's gone now. The woman standing here, she's someone who fights. The words settled over Lena like armor more substantial than the vest she wore. By 9 p.m., the extraction team was assembled in the mansion's garage. 12 people total. Adrian, Reyes, 8 additional security personnel, Marcus coordinating from the mansion, and Lena. 3 vehicles, each chosen for specific purposes. 2 armored SUVs for the assault team and 1 unmarked van for transporting the victims once they were freed. Adrian pulled Lena aside before they loaded up. "Last chance to change your mind," he said quietly. "What we're about to do is dangerous. People might die tonight. That might include me. That might include you. I know. If something happens to me, Marcus has instructions. Your mother's care continues indefinitely. Your immigration status gets resolved. You get to walk away from all of this and build whatever life you want." The careful way he laid it out, like he was arranging pieces on a chessboard, preparing for his own absence, made Lena's chest tight. "Don't talk like you're not coming back," she said. "I always plan for the worst. It's kept me alive this long." Adrian's hand moved as if to touch her face, then stopped. "But I want you to know something. When this is over, when Salvatore is finished and you're safe, you don't owe me anything. Not loyalty, not gratitude, nothing. You get to choose your own life." "What if I choose to stay?" The question surprised them both. Adrian's eyes searched hers, looking for something Lena wasn't sure she understood herself. "Then we'll figure out what that means," he said finally. "Together." Before Lena could respond, Reyes signaled that they were ready to move. The garage doors opened onto the night, and for the first time in 3 days, Lena left the besieged mansion. The drive to the port of Miami took 40 minutes through darkened streets. Adrian had coordinated with contacts in the police department. Not all of them, Lena realized, just the ones he trusted. The ones who understood that sometimes justice required working in gray areas. "We have 20 minutes before the shipment moves," Reyes reported from the lead vehicle. "Port security has been paid to look the other way, but our window is narrow." Through the van's windows, Lena could see the massive container ships looming against the night sky, their hulls illuminated by harsh industrial lighting. The port hummed with activity, cranes moving cargo, trucks navigating between stacked containers, workers moving through their late-night shifts. More invisible people, Lena thought. The ones who made the city function while everyone else slept. Adrian's voice came through her earpiece, calm and commanding. "Team 1, position at entry point Alpha. Team 2, secure the perimeter. Lena, you stay with the van until we've cleared the area. Once we bring the victims out, you help coordinate medical triage. Understood?" A chorus of confirmations echoed through the communication system. The vehicles separated, moving to their assigned positions with choreographed precision. Lena's van parked between 2 rows of containers, hidden from casual view, but close enough to respond quickly. The driver, a woman named Chen, who'd barely spoken during the drive, turned to look at Lena. "You're the one who saved Mr. Valenti's life," she said. Not a question, a statement. I just screamed. "You just changed everything." Chen's expression was unreadable. "Whatever happens tonight, know that everyone on this team volunteered. We believe in what Mr. Valenti is trying to do. Stopping men like Salvatore matters." Before Lena could respond, Adrian's voice cut through the earpiece. "We have visual on the target container. 4 guards visible, likely more inside. On my mark." The world exploded into controlled chaos. Through the van's windshield, Lena saw Adrian's team move with military precision. Doors burst open, shouts echoed between the metal containers, and the sharp crack of gunfire punctuated the night. Chen remained calm, her hand near the weapon at her hip, her eyes scanning for threats. Team 1, securing the container now, Reyes reported. Encountering resistance. More gunfire. Closer this time. Lena's medical training kicked in, her mind already running through triage protocols. 47 victims, potentially suffering from dehydration, malnutrition, physical trauma. She'd need to assess quickly, prioritize treatment, coordinate transport to medical facilities. Container is open. Adrian's voice came through, tight with controlled emotion. We need medical support now. Go, Chen said, gesturing to Lena. I'll cover you. Lena grabbed the medical kit from the van and ran. The container was a rectangle of hell painted in shipping company logos. Inside, 47 people, mostly women, several children, all of them terrified, huddled in conditions that made Lena's veterinary clinic in Sao Paulo look luxurious. The smell hit her first. Unwashed bodies, human waste, fear, sweat, and desperation. Then the sounds, whimpers, crying, someone praying in a language Lena didn't recognize. Adrian stood at the container's entrance, his expression carved from stone. But Lena saw his hands shake slightly as he lowered his weapon. Get them out, he said quietly. All of them. Now. Lena moved through the container, her training taking over. She identified the most critical cases first. A woman showing signs of severe dehydration, a child with a fever that felt dangerously high, an older man whose breathing sounded wet and labored. We need ambulances, she said into her earpiece. Multiple ambulances. And translators. I'm hearing Ukrainian, Russian, maybe Romanian. Already arranged, Marcus responded from the mansion. EMS is standing by 2 blocks away. They'll move in once the area is secure. But securing the area proved complicated. Salvatore's people had scattered when Adrian's team arrived, but they were regrouping. Lena could hear shouting in the distance, the sound of engines, more gunfire. They're bringing reinforcements, Reyes reported. We need to move faster. Adrian appeared at Lena's side, helping a young woman who could barely walk. How many can we transport immediately? He asked. 10, maybe 15 in the first wave. The rest need medical assessment before they can be moved safely. We don't have time for safe. Salvatore's people are 3 minutes out. Lena looked at the frightened faces surrounding her, saw herself reflected in their terror. She'd been where they were. Invisible, disposable, caught in systems designed to exploit the vulnerable. Then we make time, she said. Adrian's eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition that they'd both crossed lines tonight that couldn't be uncrossed. You heard her, Adrian called to his team. We hold this position. Nobody gets through to these people. Nobody. The next 10 minutes stretched into an eternity. Adrian's security team established a defensive perimeter around the container while Lena worked frantically to stabilize the most critical victims. Chen and 2 other team members helped move people to the waiting vans, speaking in soft, reassuring tones that transcended language barriers. And then Salvatore's reinforcements arrived. The gunfight that erupted was brief but intense. Adrian's people were outnumbered, but held superior positions and better training. Lena crouched inside the container with the victims, her body shielding a terrified child while bullets sparked off metal around them. When the shooting stopped, 3 of Salvatore's men were down and the rest had retreated. But one of Adrian's security team, a man named Rodriguez who joked with Lena during the drive, was wounded in the leg. I've got him, Lena said, already moving toward Rodriguez with her medical kit. The injury was serious but not life-threatening if treated quickly. Lena worked to stop the bleeding, her hands steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her system. You're going to be fine, she told Rodriguez. The bullet went through clean. Just hold pressure here while I... Lena. Adrian's voice carried a warning tone. We need to go. Now. More vehicles approaching. But Lena was looking past Adrian, at the container, at the faces of people who'd spent weeks in darkness believing no one cared if they lived or died. Not without all of them, she said. There's no time. Then we make time. Lena stood, her voice rising. You said you have lines you won't cross. You said some lives aren't disposable, so we don't leave anyone behind. The approaching vehicles were close enough that Lena could see their headlights cutting through the darkness between containers. Adrian stared at her for 1 heartbeat. 2. Then he turned to his team. You heard her. Everyone moves. Now. Load the vans to capacity. The wounded get priority. Everyone else follows on foot if necessary, but nobody gets left behind. His people moved with renewed urgency. Within 90 seconds, the first van was loaded and pulling away. The second van followed 30 seconds later. Lena helped the remaining victims, those who could walk but needed support, form a group. Adrian stayed at the rear, weapon ready, placing himself between the approaching threat and the people they were trying to save. "Go," he told Lena. "I'll cover you." Not a chance. Lena positioned herself beside him, helping support a woman who was struggling to walk. "We both go, or neither of us does." The ghost of a smile crossed Adrian's face, even as the approaching vehicles closed the distance. "You're going to get us both killed," he said. "Then at least we'll die doing the right thing." The standoff that followed happened in the space between breaths. Salvatore's vehicles screeched to a halt 50 feet away. Men poured out, weapons raised. Adrian's remaining team took defensive positions. For a moment, the entire port held its breath. Then sirens split the night. Police vehicles, real ones, official ones, flooded the area from 3 directions. Officers in tactical gear emerged, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Salvatore's men froze, caught between Adrian's team and the sudden law enforcement presence. "Federal trafficking investigation," a voice boomed through a megaphone. "Everyone on the ground, now!" Adrian's people had already melted back into the shadows between containers. Lena found herself being hustled away by Chen, moving quickly through the industrial maze toward a waiting vehicle. Behind them, chaos erupted as Salvatore's people scattered and federal agents secured the scene. Lena caught one last glimpse of Adrian, silhouetted against the port lights, before Chen pulled her into a vehicle and they were moving, leaving the port behind. "What just happened?" Lena asked, her heart still racing. "Mr. Valenti made a deal," Chen explained. "Federal authorities have been building a case against Salvatore for 2 years. They just needed evidence and witnesses. Tonight, they got both. The victims will be protected, processed through proper channels, given asylum status and support services. That was part of the deal." Lena's mind spun, trying to process it all. Adrian had used the rescue operation to deliver Salvatore to federal authorities. He'd saved 47 lives and struck a devastating blow against his enemy without firing the final shot himself. "What about Salvatore?" she asked. "Will this actually stop him?" The shipment he just lost represented 80% of his liquid capital. His people were caught in a federal operation. His trafficking network is burned. Chen's expression held grim satisfaction. "He's finished. Maybe not arrested. Men like that have too many lawyers, but finished in Miami. His empire just collapsed." The vehicle pulled into an underground garage Lena didn't recognize. Adrian was already there, giving quiet instructions to his team. When he saw Lena, something in his posture relaxed. "You held that position," he said, approaching her. "When anyone else would have run, you held. So did you. I'm used to this. You're not, yet you stood there anyway, protecting people you'd never met. They were people who needed protecting. That's enough." Adrian studied her face, his expression complex. They were both covered in grime and other people's blood. They'd just participated in an operation that was equal parts rescue mission and criminal enterprise. They'd crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. "Your mother is safe," Adrian said quietly. "I had her moved to a private facility the moment we left for the port. Salvatore's people watching her were quietly detained. She's receiving treatment and has no idea any of this happened." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother was safe. The people from the container were safe. Salvatore's operation was destroyed. They'd won. But the cost of that victory was still being calculated. "What happens now?" Lena asked. "Now we go back to the mansion. Salvatore's siege broke the moment his people got word about the port. He doesn't have the resources to maintain it." Adrian's voice carried exhaustion. "And tomorrow, we deal with the aftermath." The drive back to the mansion felt surreal. The city was waking up around them, early morning commuters starting their days, completely unaware that lives had been saved and empires had fallen while they slept. When they arrived, Marcus met them at the door with news that Salvatore had fled Miami. His remaining assets were being seized by federal authorities. His network was in chaos. The war was over. Lena stood in the mansion's foyer, the same space where she'd screamed her warning 4 days earlier, and felt the full weight of exhaustion crash over her. "You should rest," Adrian said, appearing at her side. "The guest suite is still yours for as long as you need it. And after that? After that, you decide. Your mother's treatment is covered. Your immigration status will be resolved within the month. I have lawyers handling it. You can return to veterinary medicine if you want, or do something completely different. Your life is your own again." The offer was generous, more than generous. It was freedom, handed to her without conditions or expectations. So why did it feel like an ending? "What about you?" Lena asked. "What happens to the man who just destroyed his rival and saved 47 lives in one night?" "I go back to running my empire, making the hard choices, walking the line between what's legal and what's necessary." Adrian's expression was unreadable. Same as always. "Will you keep using the invisible people, the network we built?" "If they're willing. It's proven more effective than traditional intelligence gathering." "Then I want to help coordinate it." The words came out before Lena fully thought them through, but once spoken, she knew they were right. "I understand those people. I know how to talk to them, how to build trust. And I know you'll use the intelligence to stop people like Salvatore." Adrian studied her carefully. "You're asking to stay involved in my world, knowingly, willingly. I'm asking to help make sure invisible people are seen, that their safety matters, that men like Salvatore don't get to treat human lives as commodities." Lena met his eyes directly. "You said I could choose my own life. This is what I'm choosing." The silence between them held a weight that felt significant, transformative. "Then we'll figure it out," Adrian said finally. "Together." As dawn broke over Miami, painting the mansion in shades of gold, Lena realized she'd found something she hadn't been looking for. Not safety, not invisibility, not even acceptance. She'd found purpose, and a partnership with a man who saw her not as nobody, but as someone worth standing beside when the world demanded courage. The invisible maid was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who'd learned to fight for the right to be seen. The morning after the port operation, Lena woke in the guest suite to find Miami bathed in brilliant sunlight that felt almost offensive in its cheerfulness. Her body ached from exhaustion and tension, but her mind wouldn't stop replaying the previous night. The terrified faces in that container, the sound of gunfire, the moment she'd told Adrian they weren't leaving anyone behind. She'd crossed a line, maybe several lines, and there was no going back. A knock at the door pulled her from these thoughts. Marcus stood in the hallway, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Valenti requests your presence for breakfast," he said. "When you're ready, of course." The formality felt strange after everything they'd been through. Lena showered quickly, changed into clothes that someone had thoughtfully placed in the suite's closet, and followed Marcus downstairs. She found Adrian on the terrace overlooking the bay, a breakfast spread laid out that looked like something from a magazine. He'd showered and changed as well, but exhaustion still shadowed his eyes. "Coffee?" he offered as she approached. "Please." They sat in silence for a moment, the morning breeze carrying the scent of salt water and jasmine from the garden. It was almost possible to pretend the past 4 days hadn't happened, that this was just a pleasant morning in a beautiful house. Almost. "The federal authorities released their preliminary findings an hour ago," Adrian said, breaking the silence. "Salvatore's trafficking network was larger than we thought. The victims we rescued were just one shipment. They've identified at least 3 others in the past 2 years. Lena's coffee turned bitter in her mouth. "How many people?" "Over 200. Most were moved through Miami and dispersed throughout the country." Adrian's voice was flat, controlled. "The victims from last night are being processed through proper channels now. Translators have been provided. Trauma counselors, medical care. Several have already agreed to testify." "That's good. That's what we wanted." "It's what you wanted," Adrian corrected quietly. "I wanted Salvatore destroyed. You wanted those people saved. There's a difference." Lena studied his profile, the sharp lines of his face softened slightly by the morning light. "You could have just tipped off the authorities and let them handle the rescue." "I could have, but that wouldn't have been enough for you. This wasn't about me." "Wasn't it?" Adrian turned to look at her directly. You're the one who insisted we not leave anyone behind. You're the one who stood in that container and refused to run when Salvatore's reinforcements arrived. You made this operation about saving lives, not just winning a war. And you listened. You could have overruled me, left the wounded, saved time, minimized risk. I could have, but you were right. Something complicated moved across Adrian's expression. I've spent 8 years building an empire, making strategic decisions, calculating acceptable losses. And in one night, a woman who used to clean my floors reminded me that some things shouldn't be calculated. Before Lena could respond, Marcus appeared with a phone. Sir, you have a call. It's urgent. Adrian took the phone, his expression hardening as he listened. When he spoke, his voice carried the cold authority Lena had heard during the siege. When? How many? No, don't engage yet. I'll handle this personally. He ended the call and stood abruptly. What's wrong? Lena asked. Salvatore. He's not as finished as we thought. Adrian's jaw tightened. He's holed up in one of his remaining properties with a dozen of his most loyal people. And he's demanding a meeting with both of us. Lena's stomach dropped. Both of us? He wants you there specifically, says he'll only negotiate terms if you're present. Adrian's eyes held barely controlled rage. He's trying to salvage what's left of his reputation by making a public spectacle of this. What kind of spectacle? Marcus answered before Adrian could. Mr. Brunaro has called a gathering of the major families in Miami. Every crime boss, every significant player in the city. He's claiming that Mr. Valenti violated protocol by involving federal authorities, that he broke the unwritten rules that govern our world. And he wants to humiliate me in front of them, Adrian said flatly. Prove that I've gone soft, that I'm controlled by a woman who appeared out of nowhere and disrupted everything. Lena understood immediately. In Adrian's world, perception was power. If Salvatore could paint Adrian as weak, controlled by emotions instead of strategic thinking, it would undermine everything he'd built. You can't go, she said. It's obviously a trap. I have to go. If I refuse, I look afraid, weak. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. The family's already questioned my methods. I don't deal in drugs. I've shut down trafficking operations. I've made enemies by drawing lines others consider foolish. If I don't face Salvatore now, I lose credibility I can't afford to lose. Then go alone. There's no reason I need to be there. Except he's made it a condition of the meeting. And if you don't appear, he'll claim you were a fiction, a convenient story I invented to justify federal involvement. Adrian's expression was grim. He's backed me into a corner. Either we both go and face whatever he's planned, or I refuse and watch my empire crumble from within. Lena stood, moving to the terrace railing. Below, the grounds were being restored after the siege. Workers replaced damaged sections of wall, landscapers repaired torn gardens, evidence of violence being systematically erased. But some scars couldn't be so easily fixed. When is this meeting? She asked. Tonight, 8 p.m. At the Palazzo, one of the few neutral venues left in the city. And you think he'll try something there? In front of all the families? I think he's desperate enough to try anything. His empire is collapsing. His trafficking network is exposed. He's facing federal charges and financial ruin. Men in his position either run or make one final play for survival. Adrian joined her at the railing. And Salvatore doesn't run. Lena thought about the voice on the phone during the siege, calling her nobody, claiming her life was worthless. She thought about the people in that container, invisible and disposable in Salvatore's calculations. She thought about 2 years of staying silent, unseen, safe. I'll go, she said quietly, but not as your weakness. If Salvatore wants to make a spectacle, we give him one, but on our terms. Adrian studied her carefully. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that I'm tired of men like Salvatore deciding who matters and who doesn't. I'm thinking that maybe it's time someone stood up in front of all those powerful people and told the truth about what he really is. That's dangerous, Lena. These families, they have their own codes, their own sense of justice. Many of them look the other way on trafficking because it's profitable. Challenging that directly could make you a target. I'm already a target. He tried to kill me, burn down my home, threaten my mother. Lena's voice strengthened. At least this way I get to face him directly, on record. in front of witnesses who can't pretend they didn't know what he was doing. Something like pride flickered across Adrian's face. You understand this changes everything. If you stand up in front of the families and accuse Salvatore publicly, you become part of this world permanently. There's no going back to invisibility. I don't want to go back. I want to move forward. The words settled between them with the weight of a vow. Adrian reached out slowly, giving Lena time to step away if she wanted. When she didn't, his hand cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said quietly. "And the most terrifying." Terrifying? Because you make me want to be better, to actually live up to the code I claim to follow. His eyes searched hers. You make me believe that honor might actually matter more than power. Lena's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, heavy with things neither of them had said, but both of them felt. Then Adrian stepped back, breaking the moment. "We have 8 hours to prepare," he said, his voice returning to business. "If we're doing this, we do it right." The preparation was unlike anything Lena had experienced. First came the security briefing, Reyes walking her through the palazzo's layout, identifying exits, safe zones, potential threats. Then the tactical discussion about what to say, how to say it, the careful political dance of accusations that couldn't be too direct but had to be clear enough to matter. The families respect strength, Marcus explained as they reviewed strategy in Adrian's office. But they also respect protocol. You can't simply accuse Salvatore of trafficking without evidence. "We have evidence," Lena countered. 47 victims currently in federal custody, federal charges being filed, his own people caught in the act. Legal evidence, yes, but in that room tonight, with those people, legal evidence is meaningless. They operate in a different system. Marcus glanced at Adrian. "You need to present this in terms they understand." Adrian nodded slowly. Salvatore violated the code by targeting civilians, by threatening Lena's mother in a public hospital, by burning an apartment building with innocent residents. Those are violations even the families will recognize. And the trafficking, Lena pressed, is profitable. Many of them look the other way because they benefit indirectly. Adrian's expression was hard. "We can't make this about morality, Lena. We have to make it about violations of protocol, about Salvatore being so desperate and sloppy that he's drawing federal attention to everyone." Lena hated the calculation in it, the cold political reality that human lives mattered less than protocol violations. But she understood. In Adrian's world, you worked within the system even as you tried to change it. "Fine," she said, "then I'll focus on the protocol violations. But I won't pretend those 47 people don't matter." "No one's asking you to pretend." Adrian's voice softened. "Just to be strategic about how you frame it." As the afternoon wore on, another element of preparation became necessary. Lena's appearance. A woman named Sophia arrived at the mansion with an arsenal of clothing, makeup, and accessories. She studied Lena with the critical eye of a professional. "Mr. Valenti says you need to look powerful," Sophia said. "Not like a victim, not like someone being protected, like someone who belongs in that room." What followed was a transformation that felt both empowering and unsettling. The dress Sophia chose was deep emerald green, elegant and professional, with just enough edge to suggest this was a woman who didn't need to hide. The makeup emphasized Lena's features without looking overdone. Her hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun, was styled in soft waves that somehow made her look both sophisticated and formidable. When Lena finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "This isn't me," she said quietly. "It is now." Sophia's expression held understanding. "You've been invisible for 2 years. Tonight you need to be unforgettable. This is armor, Lena, just like the vest you wore last night. It protects you by making sure everyone knows exactly who you are." When Lena descended the stairs to the main foyer where Adrian waited, his expression stopped her in her tracks. He'd changed into a suit that probably cost more than a car, dark and impeccably tailored. But it was the way he looked at her, with something between wonder and concern, that made Lena's heart race. "You look—" Adrian stopped, seeming to search for words. "You look like you could conquer the world. I just want to survive the night." "You'll do more than survive." He offered his arm formally. "Ready?" Lena took his arm, feeling the solid strength of him, and nodded. They were as ready as they'd ever be. The palazzo occupied prime real estate in downtown Miami, a historic building that had been converted into a private club where men with complicated business interests could meet away from prying eyes. The exterior was innocuous, but the interior dripped with old-world elegance. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. And everywhere, people who radiated power. Lena recognized some faces from news reports. Others were unfamiliar but clearly significant based on how people stepped aside as they passed. The families Adrian had mentioned, crime bosses who controlled their own territories, their own operations, their own codes of conduct. They all stopped talking when Adrian entered with Lena on his arm. The silence felt like judgment. Lena forced herself to stand straight, to meet their stares without flinching, to remember Sophia's words about armor. Mr. Valenti. A silver-haired man approached, his suit probably custom-made in Italy. We weren't sure you'd actually come. Antonio. Adrian's greeting was cordial but cool. I received an invitation from Salvatore. It seemed impolite to refuse. Antonio's eyes slid to Lena, assessing. And this is the woman who's caused so much disruption. This is Lena Morales, Adrian said firmly. The woman who saved my life and helped dismantle a trafficking operation that was drawing federal attention to all of us. The implication was clear. Salvatore's operation had been a liability to everyone in this room. Antonio's expression remained neutral. Salvatore is waiting in the main salon. Shall we? The main salon was a cavernous room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Miami skyline. 23 men occupied the space, each representing a different faction, different interests, different pieces of the city's criminal infrastructure. And at the far end, Salvatore Brunardo stood waiting. He was smaller than Lena expected, barely taller than her, with the kind of polished appearance that came from expensive grooming and tailored clothes. But his eyes, cold, calculating, utterly devoid of empathy, made her skin crawl. Adrian, Salvatore said, his cultured voice carrying across the room, how good of you to join us. And you brought your pet. The insult was deliberate, designed to provoke. Lena felt Adrian tense beside her, but kept her own expression neutral. I brought the witness to your protocol violations, Adrian said calmly. The woman whose life you tried to end. Multiple times. Witness? Salvatore laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. She's a maid, Adrian, an illegal immigrant who cleans floors. Her testimony is worthless. Her testimony is the reason federal agents have arrested 37 of your people, Lena said, her voice clear and steady. The reason 200 trafficking victims have been identified. The reason your empire is collapsing. The room went utterly silent. Lena had just spoken directly to Salvatore, violating what was apparently an unspoken rule about who had permission to speak in these gatherings. Salvatore's expression darkened. I dare to tell the truth, Lena interrupted, her years of staying silent suddenly irrelevant in the face of this man's presumption. You traffic in human beings, children. You reduce people to commodities and profit from their suffering. And you're so desperate to hide that truth that you've violated every protocol these families claim to respect. She turned to address the room, feeling 23 pairs of eyes on her. He tried to kill Adrian Valenti with a car bomb. When that failed, he burned down my apartment building, endangering 30 innocent residents. He threatened my mother in a public hospital. He drew federal attention that's now threatening everyone in this room. Lena's voice strengthened. Not because Adrian violated your codes, because Salvatore's operation was so sloppy, so desperate, that he left evidence everywhere he went. This is absurd, Salvatore sputtered. Antonio, are you going to let this woman? Let her finish, Antonio said quietly. I want to hear what she has to say. Lena met Salvatore's furious gaze directly. You called me nobody, invisible, worthless. And you're right, I was invisible. For 2 years, I cleaned floors and pretended not to see the things that happened in the shadows of this city. She paused, letting the words land. But being invisible taught me something. It taught me to see the other invisible people. The cleaners, the dock workers, the service staff that men like you never notice. She pulled a folded paper from her clutch, evidence that Reyes had prepared, testimony from the invisible network they'd built. These are statements from 32 people who work in your various businesses, Salvatore. They describe shipments they saw, conversations they overheard, payments they processed. They're willing to testify to federal authorities about everything they witnessed while you assumed they were too insignificant to matter. Salvatore's face had gone pale. Those are lies. Fabrications designed to expose the truth, Adrian finished, stepping forward to stand beside Lena. She's right about everything. Your operation was drawing federal attention. Your protocol violations were endangering everyone. And your assumption that invisible people don't see, don't know, don't matter, that was your biggest mistake. Antonio was studying the papers Lena had provided, his expression thoughtful. Other family heads were murmuring amongst themselves. The federal investigation is ongoing, Adrian continued, but it's focused on Salvatore's trafficking network, not on legitimate business operations, not on the families who've maintained protocol and discretion. The implication was clear. Salvatore was a liability, and eliminating him would protect everyone else. This is a setup, Salvatore spat. You violated our codes by involving federal authorities. You violated our codes by being so sloppy that federal authorities got involved, one of the other family heads interrupted. A man named Chen, who controlled interests in the Asian district. I've had federal agents questioning my shipping operations because of your trafficking routes. That's unacceptable. Others began voicing agreement. Salvatore had made himself a problem, and problems in their world were dealt with swiftly. Enough! Antonio's voice cut through the murmurs. Salvatore Brunaro, you stand accused of protocol violations that have endangered the families. Multiple civilian casualties, federal attention, sloppy operations. What is your defense? Salvatore's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies, finding none. I was defending my territory, he said finally. Adrian Valenti has been systematically destroying my operations for years. He's refused to negotiate, refused to compromise. I had every right to defend myself. By bombing his car? Antonio asked mildly. By burning an apartment building? By threatening a sick woman in a hospital? She was leverage. He cared about her. She was an innocent civilian, Adrian said coldly, under my protection. An attack on her was an attack on me, and you didn't just attack her once. You made it personal. You made it sloppy, and now we're all dealing with federal scrutiny because you couldn't control yourself. The room's energy had shifted decisively against Salvatore. Lena could see him realize it, see the moment he understood he'd lost. This isn't over, Salvatore said, his voice shaking with rage. You think you've won, Adrian? You've just made yourself a target. Every family in this room now knows you're controlled by a woman, weakened by sentiment. It's only a matter of time before... Before what? Lena's voice cut through his tirade. Before someone else makes the mistake you made? Assumes that caring about people is weakness instead of strength? She stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and Salvatore. You failed because you assumed I was nobody. You failed because you never considered that invisible people might be watching, might be gathering evidence, might matter. You failed because you're so convinced of your own superiority that you can't imagine a world where people like me have power. Lena's voice dropped, becoming quieter but somehow more forceful. But I do have power. The power to see what you tried to hide. The power to save 47 lives you tried to destroy. The power to stand in this room and tell every person here exactly what you are. She turned to address the assembled families one final time. I'm not asking you to care about morality. I'm not asking you to change your codes or your operations. I'm just telling you the truth. Salvatore Brunaro is a liability. He's sloppy, desperate, and drawing federal attention to everyone. And if you don't deal with him, that attention will only get worse. The silence that followed felt absolute. Then Antonio spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Salvatore Brunaro, the families have heard the accusations against you. We find that your actions have violated protocol and endangered our interests. You are hereby stripped of protection and privileges. Your operations are dissolved. Your territory is forfeit. You have 48 hours to leave Miami. If you remain after that time, you will be considered an enemy to all the families. It was a death sentence disguised as exile. Salvatore would never make it out of Miami alive, and everyone in the room knew it. Salvatore's face twisted with rage and fear. You can't. This isn't... Adrian, you bastard! You've destroyed me! You destroyed yourself, Adrian said quietly. The moment you decided some lives were disposable. Security appeared to escort Salvatore from the room. As he was led away, still shouting threats and accusations, Lena felt the full weight of what they'd just done settle over her. They'd won. Salvatore was finished. The trafficking network was exposed. The families had sided with Adrian, but the cost of that victory was written in every face in the room. The knowledge that Lena had just made herself a permanent fixture in a world she'd once tried desperately to avoid. Antonio approached as the other families began departing. "That was quite a performance, Miss Morales," he said. "You have a gift for reading people, for seeing what others miss." "I just told the truth." The truth, delivered at precisely the right moment, in precisely the right way. Antonio's smile was knowing. "Adrian, you've found yourself an interesting partner, one who understands that power isn't always about force." After Antonio left, Lena and Adrian stood alone in the vast salon, the city lights glittering through the windows. "You were magnificent," Adrian said quietly. "Terrifying and magnificent." "I was angry. He called me nobody one too many times." "You proved him wrong in the most devastating way possible." Adrian moved closer. "But you understand what this means? You're not invisible anymore. Every family in that room knows your face, your name, your capabilities. You can't go back to cleaning floors and staying silent." "I know, and I don't want to." Lena met his eyes. "I want to use the network we built. The invisible people who see everything. I want to make sure others like Salvatore can't operate in the shadows." "That's dangerous work." "So is staying silent while people suffer." Adrian's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt simultaneously natural and momentous. "Then we do it together," he said. "Build something better. Use the codes and systems that exist to protect people instead of exploiting them. Can that actually work in your world?" "I don't know, but you make me want to try." They stood together in the empty salon, two people who'd found each other through violence and necessity, now choosing to stand together by choice. The city sprawled below them, full of invisible people and hidden suffering, systems of power and exploitation, but also full of possibility, of the chance to use power differently, to see the people others overlooked, to fight for the right of everyone to be seen. Lena had stopped being invisible, and in doing so, she'd shown Adrian that visibility could be a weapon, a shield, and a purpose all at once. The war with Salvatore was over, but the real work, building something better from the ashes, was just beginning. The aftermath of the Palazzo meeting unfolded over the following weeks with the methodical precision of dominoes falling in sequence. Salvatore's remaining operations were dismantled by federal authorities working with intelligence from Lena's invisible network. His financial assets were seized, his people scattered or were arrested, and exactly 47 hours after Antonio's decree, Salvatore Brunaro's body was discovered in a warehouse near the port, 3 bullets in his chest, his empire reduced to a cautionary tale whispered in the shadows of Miami's underworld. Lena should have felt satisfaction at his death. Instead, she felt only a hollow exhaustion, the recognition that violence had solved a problem but hadn't healed the underlying wounds. She was in Adrian's office reviewing testimony from the trafficking victims when Marcus brought the news of Salvatore's death. Adrian's expression remained neutral, but Lena saw his hands tighten briefly on the desk. "Which family handled it?" Adrian asked quietly. "Antonio's people. Clean, professional, no complications." Marcus paused. "The families are calling it justice, restitution for protocol violations." "They're calling it self-preservation," Adrian corrected. "Salvatore was a liability, so they eliminated the liability. That's how this world works." After Marcus left, Lena set down the papers she'd been reading and looked at Adrian directly. "Does it bother you? That he's dead?" "It bothers me that death was inevitable the moment he violated the codes. It bothers me that there's no middle ground, no option for redemption or transformation." Adrian's voice was heavy. "But do I mourn Salvatore specifically? No. He made his choices. This was always going to be the outcome. And if you'd made different choices, would you be worried about the same fate?" The question hung between them, sharp and uncomfortable. "Every day," Adrian admitted. I walk a line between legitimate business and the empire my father built. I try to minimize harm, to redirect power toward protection instead of exploitation. But I'm still part of this world, Lena, still complicit in systems that destroy people. Then why stay in it? Because leaving creates a vacuum, and vacuums get filled by men worse than Salvatore. Adrian moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the Miami skyline. At least this way I can control some of the damage, set boundaries, protect people like those 47 victims. Lena joined him at the window, their reflections ghostly in the glass. That's not enough for you anymore, is it? She said softly. Minimizing harm, you want to actually build something better. I want to believe it's possible, but I don't know if it is. Adrian turned to look at her. You make me think it might be. That maybe power can be used for more than just maintaining power. The conversation was interrupted by Rosa, appearing in the doorway with news that transformed everything. Mr. Valenti, Miss Morales, there's someone here to see you both. She says it's urgent. The woman waiting in the foyer was in her early 20s, thin and haunted, with the kind of exhaustion that spoke of trauma still being processed. Lena recognized her immediately as one of the women they'd rescued from the container at the port. My name is Katerina, the woman said in heavily accented English. I am from Ukraine. You saved my life 3 weeks ago. I remember, Lena said gently, moving forward. How are you? Are you being treated well? Yes, very well. The people at the shelter, they are kind. They help me with papers, with English lessons, with finding apartment. Katerina's hands twisted together nervously. But I come here because I must tell you something. About the others. Adrian gestured for her to sit, his expression attentive but careful. Lena sat beside Katerina, recognizing the signs of someone building courage to speak. The women and children you save, we talk together at the shelter, Katerina continued. We share stories about where we come from, how we end up in that container, and we realize something. We are not the only ones. We know, Adrian said quietly. The federal investigation has identified other shipments. No, you do not understand. Katerina leaned forward, her voice urgent. Not shipments from before. Shipments that are coming now. Salvatore, he is dead. Yes? But his network, it is bigger than just him. There are other men, other operations. The trafficking, it does not stop. Lena felt ice slide down her spine. Of course. Salvatore had been a piece of a larger machine, and removing him hadn't dismantled the entire system. Do you have names? Adrian asked. Locations? Any information about these other operations? Katerina pulled a folded paper from her pocket. I write down everything the other women tell me, places they remember, names they hear, details about the people who control the routes. I do not know if it helps, but I think you should know. Lena took the paper, scanning the contents. It was written in careful English, clearly, laboriously translated, listing details that read like a roadmap of human suffering. This is incredibly brave, Lena said, meeting Katerina's eyes. Sharing this information puts you at risk. I am already at risk. All of us are. Katerina's voice hardened with determination. But I'm tired of being afraid, tired of being victim. You show me that invisible people can fight back, that we can matter, so I fight back the way I can, by telling truth. The simple statement carried such weight that Lena felt tears prick her eyes. This young woman who'd survived unspeakable trauma was choosing to use her voice, her knowledge, her refusal to stay silent as a weapon. We'll use this information, Adrian promised, and we'll make sure you're protected. Whatever you need, security, relocation, support, it's yours. I do not want protection. I want justice. Katerina stood, her thin frame somehow radiating strength. I want the men who did this to me, to all of us, to face consequences. Real consequences. Not just getting killed in warehouse. I want them in prison, their empires destroyed, their victims freed. After Katerina left with promises of continued support and protection, Lena and Adrian sat in heavy silence, the weight of her testimony settling over them. She's right, Lena said finally. Salvatore's death didn't solve anything. It just removed one person from a system that's still operating. Dismantling that system will take years, maybe decades. Adrian's voice was bleak. And it will require resources, coordination, political will that doesn't currently exist. Then we build it. Lena stood, her mind already racing with possibilities. We use the invisible network to gather intelligence on every trafficking operation in Miami. We coordinate with federal authorities who actually care about stopping this. We use your connections to pressure the families into making trafficking unacceptable, a violation of code so fundamental that anyone who engages in it faces immediate consequences. The families won't agree to that. Many of them profit from trafficking, directly or indirectly. Then we make it unprofitable. We expose operations. We rescue victims. We make trafficking so risky, so likely to draw federal attention, that it's not worth the money. Lena's voice strengthened with conviction. We turn the invisible people into the most effective intelligence network this city has ever seen, and we use that network to protect the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. Adrian stared at her as if seeing her fully for the first time. You're talking about transforming the entire underground economy of Miami, he said slowly, redirecting power structures that have existed for generations. I'm talking about using your power for something that actually matters. You said you wanted to believe it's possible to build something better, so let's build it. The silence that followed felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. If we do this, we make enemies, Adrian warned. Not just criminal organizations, but legitimate businesses that rely on exploited labor. Politicians who benefit from looking the other way. Systems built on the assumption that some people are disposable. I know. But Katerina was willing to walk into your house and share information that could get her killed because she believed we'd use it to help others. How can I do less? Adrian's expression transformed, something fierce and determined replacing the careful control he usually maintained. Then we do it, he said. But we do it smart. We build the network first, establish protocols, create systems that protect our sources. We coordinate with federal authorities but maintain independence. And we use every resource I have to make this work. Over the following months, the transformation began. Lena's invisible network expanded exponentially. The cleaners, dock workers, service staff, delivery drivers, all the people who moved through the city unseen, became a coordinated intelligence operation. They received training on what to look for, how to document evidence, how to report safely. In exchange, they received protection, legal assistance with immigration issues, and the knowledge that their contributions mattered. Adrian redirected significant resources from his traditional operations into what became known quietly as the Protection Initiative. Legitimate businesses were established to employ people escaping exploitation. Legal services were provided to trafficking victims seeking asylum. Safe houses were created, staffed by professionals who understood trauma. And quietly, methodically, trafficking operations throughout Miami began to collapse. The families noticed. Of course they noticed. 6 months after Salvatore's death, Antonio requested a meeting. Lena accompanied Adrian to a restaurant in Coral Gables, a neutral location where business could be conducted over expensive wine and carefully worded conversations. You've been busy, Antonio observed as they settled into a private dining room. The Protection Initiative, very impressive, very ambitious. Thank you, Adrian said neutrally. Also very disruptive to established interests. Antonio's tone remained pleasant, but his eyes were sharp. Several families have expressed concerns about your activities. The intelligence network you've built, the pressure you're putting on certain operations, it's causing complications. Complications for people who traffic in human beings, Lena said quietly. That's the point. Antonio turned his attention to her, his expression thoughtful. Miss Morales, you've become quite influential in our world. The families speak of you with a mixture of respect and concern. They're not accustomed to women having such direct power. Then they need to get accustomed to it. A slight smile crossed Antonio's face. Indeed. Which brings me to why I requested this meeting. The families have been discussing Adrian's initiatives. There are two perspectives emerging. Some see what you're building as a threat to established order. Others see it as an evolution, a way to modernize operations and reduce federal scrutiny. And which perspective do you hold? Adrian asked. I hold the perspective that trafficking is messy, draws unwanted attention, and ultimately unsustainable in the modern world. Antonio's voice carried quiet authority. I hold the perspective that Adrian has found a way to maintain power while reducing the kinds of complications that destroyed Salvatore. I hold the perspective that smart leaders adapt. He paused, letting the words settle. I'm prepared to support your protection initiative, publicly, among the families. But I need assurance that your operations won't threaten legitimate business interests, that you'll maintain the codes and protocols that keep our world stable. Define legitimate, Lena said, her voice carrying an edge. Antonio's smile widened. Interesting question. Let me propose an answer. Legitimate business doesn't exploit those who can't fight back. It doesn't traffic in human beings. It doesn't target civilians or draw federal attention through sloppy operations. Within those parameters, there's room for many kinds of enterprise. Including yours, Adrian observed, including mine. I have no interest in trafficking or exploitation, but I do have interest in maintaining order, protecting my territory, and ensuring the families can operate without constant federal intervention. Antonio's expression became serious. What you're building could give us cover. Legitimate operations to shield the less legitimate. A reputation for cleaning up our own problems before authorities get involved. That has value. Lena understood the calculation immediately. Antonio wasn't supporting them out of morality. He was supporting them because it was strategically advantageous. But if that strategic advantage saved lives, did the motivation matter? We'll maintain protocols, Adrian said carefully. We'll work within established structures. But the protection initiative is non-negotiable. Trafficking operations get exposed and dismantled. No exceptions. Agreed. In exchange, I'll bring the other families in line. Make trafficking a protocol violation on par with targeting civilians. Anyone who engages in it faces the same consequences Salvatore did. Antonio raised his wine glass. To evolution. And to partnerships that serve mutual interests. They drank, the agreement sealed in a way that would never appear on paper but would reshape Miami's criminal landscape nonetheless. As they left the restaurant, Lena felt the weight of what they'd just accomplished. They'd turned morality into strategy, made human dignity a matter of protocol. It wasn't perfect. It relied on systems and people who were far from innocent. But it was progress. We just made a deal with a crime boss to stop human trafficking, Lena said as they reached the car. I'm not sure how to feel about that. Feel whatever you need to feel, but know that we just saved lives without firing a shot. Adrian's expression was complex. That's the art of operating in this world. Finding leverage, making allies, turning self-interest toward better outcomes. Does it bother you that Antonio's support is strategic rather than moral? It bothers me that morality alone never would have been enough to convince him, but I'll take strategic support over moral opposition. At least this way, the work continues. The work did continue. Over the next year, the protection initiative expanded throughout South Florida. More victims were rescued and supported. More trafficking operations were exposed and dismantled. The invisible network grew stronger, more coordinated, more effective. And Lena's mother arrived in Miami for treatment. Elena Morales was a smaller, older version of her daughter, with the same dark eyes and determined chin. She'd spent 6 weeks in intensive treatment at Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center, her condition improving dramatically with access to proper medical care. Lena brought her to the mansion on a sunny afternoon, nervous about how her mother would react to the world her daughter now inhabited. Elena took one look at the marble foyer, the expensive art, the obvious wealth, and turned to Lena with a raised eyebrow. So, she said in Portuguese, you want to explain how my daughter went from cleaning houses to living in a palace? Over tea on the terrace, the same terrace where Lena and Adrian had shared breakfast the morning after the port operation, Lena told her mother everything. The scream that saved Adrian's life, the siege, the rescue operation, the confrontation with Salvatore, the protection initiative. Elena listened without interruption, her expression moving through shock, fear, pride, and something that looked like understanding. You were always like this, Elena said finally. Even as a child, you saw a hurt animal, you had to help it. You saw injustice, you couldn't stay silent. I thought maybe becoming a veterinarian would be enough, would give you a way to heal without risking yourself. I'm sorry I worried you. Don't apologize for being who you are. Elena reached across the table, taking Lena's hand. You've built something important here, something that saves lives. I'm proud of you, Minafila, even if it terrifies me. It terrifies me too sometimes. Good. Fear keeps you careful. Elena's grip tightened. But don't let fear stop you from doing what matters. You've learned to use your voice. Don't lose that. Adrian appeared on the terrace then, having given them time alone. Elena studied him with the critical eye of a mother evaluating the man in her daughter's life. Mr. Valenti, she said in careful English, thank you for saving my life. The treatment here, it is very good. You're welcome, though technically your daughter saved my life first. I'm just repaying the debt. My daughter tells me you've changed your business, that you're trying to build something better. I'm trying. Whether I'll succeed is an open question. Elena nodded slowly. In São Paulo, there is a saying, não é o mais forte que sobrevive, nem o mais inteligente, mas o que melhor se adapta às mudanças. Do you know this? Adrian shook his head. It means, it is not the strongest who survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one who best adapts to change. Elena's eyes held quiet wisdom. You are adapting, Mr. Valenti. Learning to use power differently, that is good. But remember, my daughter is not your redemption. She is her own person, with her own purpose. I know, Adrian said quietly. She reminds me of that regularly. Something passed between them. An understanding, perhaps, or an acknowledgement that they both loved Lena and wanted her to thrive in her own way. After Elena left to rest in the guest suite, Adrian and Lena remained on the terrace as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Your mother is formidable, Adrian observed. She survived raising me alone, building a life from nothing, then fighting cancer without adequate resources. Formidable doesn't begin to cover it. She's right, you know, about you not being my redemption. Lena turned to look at him fully. I know I'm not, but we can build something together that's better than what either of us could build alone. That's not redemption, that's partnership. Adrian's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that had become familiar over the months they'd worked together. I love you, he said quietly. I should have said it before now, but I love the way you see the world, the way you refuse to accept that some people are disposable, the way you've transformed my entire understanding of what power can be used for. Lena's breath caught. They danced around this truth for months, both of them aware of what was growing between them, but cautious about naming it. I love you too, she said, even though you're stubborn and calculating and sometimes way too comfortable with morally gray areas. Especially because of those things? Maybe, Lena smiled. You're not a good man, Adrian, but you're trying to become better. And that effort, that choice to keep trying, even when it's easier to stay the same, that's what I love. The kiss that followed felt like a promise, not of perfection or easy answers, but of commitment to keep building something better, together. 3 months later, Lena stood in a renovated storefront in Little Havana, surrounded by veterinary equipment and supplies that had been carefully selected and installed over the previous weeks. The sign outside read, Morales Community Veterinary Clinic, in both English and Spanish. Adrian had funded it, but with careful legal structures ensuring Lena maintained complete control and ownership. It was hers, a reclamation of the calling she'd left behind in Brazil, transformed into something that served the invisible people who'd become her network and her purpose. Rosa was there for the opening, along with Marcus, Reyes, and several members of the security team who'd become friends. Elena, her cancer in remission, stood beside her daughter with proud tears in her eyes. And dozens of people from the neighborhood, immigrants, service workers, families who lived paycheck to paycheck, came through the doors with their pets, their trust, and their stories. This is beautiful, Elena said quietly as Lena examined a small dog brought in by a woman who cleaned offices downtown. You've come home to who you were meant to be. I'm still part of Adrian's world, Lena reminded her. The Protection Initiative, the Intelligence Network, that continues. Yes, but now you have this too, a space that's entirely yours, a purpose that belongs to you, not to any organization or partnership. Elena smiled at Sam. Balance, Minafila. That's how you survive in complicated worlds. That evening, back at the mansion, Lena found Adrian in his office. The space had transformed over the past year, less a war room, more a coordination center for the various legitimate businesses and protection initiatives they'd built together. "How was the opening?" he asked, looking up from reports he'd been reviewing. "Perfect. Overwhelming. Exactly what I needed." Lena settled into the chair across from his desk. "Thank you for making it possible." "You made it possible. I just provided resources." "You provided more than that. You provided the space for me to become someone other than just your partner in the protection initiative. You let me build something separate, something mine." Adrian set down his papers, his full attention on her. "I told you once that you don't owe me anything. That still stands. The clinic, your mother's care, your immigration status, those aren't leverage. They're debts repaid and promises kept. I know, which is why I can choose to stay. Not because I'm obligated, but because this is where I want to be." She moved around the desk, and Adrian stood to meet her. In the years since that first desperate scream, they'd built something neither of them had anticipated. Not just a partnership or a romance, but a transformation of how power could be wielded in a world that usually rewarded exploitation. "The families are calling you Lavos now," Adrian said, his hand settling on her waist. "The voice, because you speak for people who've never had anyone speak for them." "And what are they calling you?" "Il Riformatore," the reformer. Adrian's smile was wry. "Some say it with respect, others with derision, but all of them are watching to see if reform is actually possible in our world." "Is it?" "I don't know, but we're proving it might be. One rescued victim, one dismantled operation, one life saved at a time." They stood together in the office where Lena had once cleaned and pretended not to see, where she'd first learned the truth about Adrian's world, where they'd planned operations that had saved lives and destroyed empires. The invisible Maid was gone completely now. In her place stood a woman who'd learned that visibility could be a weapon, that voices could shatter systems, that love could exist even in complicated circumstances. "My mother asked me today if I'm happy," Lena said quietly. "I told her I'm building something that matters with someone I love. That's not the same as happy. It's better." "Better how?" "Because it's purposeful. Because it recognizes that the world is complicated and beautiful and broken, and the best we can do is try to fix small pieces of it while we're here." Adrian pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "I was a crime boss who'd convinced myself that minimizing harm was enough. Then you screamed, and everything changed. You made me want to be better, to actually build something that might last beyond violence and power. We built it together, and we'll keep building it." Outside the office windows, Miami glittered in the darkness, a city of 8 million stories, countless invisible people, systems of power and exploitation that predated them both and would likely outlast them. But within that city, 47 people lived free because Lena and Adrian had refused to leave anyone behind. Hundreds of trafficking victims had been rescued through the intelligence network they'd built. Thousands of immigrants had access to legal services, medical care, and employment that didn't exploit them. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was enough to matter. And for Lena Morales, the woman who'd learned to see and to speak and to fight, that was enough to build a life on. She'd been invisible once. Now she was seen, and she was using that visibility to make sure others could be seen too. That was worth every risk, every complication, every complicated compromise. That was worth everything. As Miami slept and dreamed around them, Lena and Adrian stood together in the mansion where her transformation had begun, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new opportunities to prove that power could be used for more than just maintaining power. They were ready. They were together. And they were building something better, one choice at a time. The invisible warning that had started everything had become a voice that couldn't be silenced. And that voice was changing Miami, one saved life at a time, transforming what it meant to have power in a world that had forgotten some people mattered. Lena had screamed once to save a life. Now she spoke every day to save hundreds, and she would never be silent again.